Eric, my head was like all over the place because I'm like trying to find answers, right? I'm like literally trying to find answers about myself. And I'm like,
to Google your symptoms, including these key phrase, Ted Bundy. What could go wrong there?
Yes. Ted Bundy, could he have been helped with medication? Because I'm thinking maybe I'm a psychopath too or something. Because in my mind, people were saying the same thing about me that they were saying about Ted Bundy.
Okay.
So that's where it starts. So could Ted Bundy have been helped with medication? And then there was all this speculation that Ted Bundy had this, Ted Bundy had that, Ted Bundy may have had ADHD. And so I clicked on, I'm sure, had to be something dealing with ADHD, because then after about 2 or 3 more clicks, guess where I ended up? On the website for Chad. And not just on the website for Chad, but on the page with all the symptoms of ADHD right there in my face. And so I'm sitting there and I'm reading all the symptoms and I'm just like, ding, 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 ding. Like all of that's me, ding, ding. And like the more dings with the, the check marks and the boxes going off, like all the way down the list, I just started crying like hot tears because I'm like, this is what's going on with me.
ADHD Rewired, episode 319. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups. And you can learn all about our intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. You can do all of this at our website, ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. Today's guest is Stacey Machelle. Stacey is a journalist by training and profession turned actor and stand-up comedian. She works as a warm-up comic on A Little Late with Lilly Singh, the late night talk show on NBC. She also has about a dozen other side hustles that she says she's been fired from, at least 6 of them. And Stacey wanted to come on the podcast to talk about wanting to educate Black women who are undiagnosed and untreated. So with that said, welcome. I kind of ad-libbed a little bit on your on your bio there.
That's okay.
So welcome. I'm glad you are here.
I'm glad to be here, Eric. Thank you so much.
So tell us a little bit about your sort of origin story, understanding that you have ADHD.
Okay. Wow. So I started my career as a news reporter. And it's so funny that I never noticed that I was having challenges until I got into the professional workplace. And so just pretty immediately, things that were so just easy for all of my coworkers, I was having challenges with, like little clerical things that go along with being a news reporter. It's not all about being on camera and smiling and reading from the teleprompter. You have to, set up appointments with your sources. You have to gather the stories. You have to write the stories. You have to, if you're in a small market, edit those stories and put in all the information that the producers and the directors need. Like how long is your story? Where do we fit it into the newscast? Just little things that I called nitpicky. Like I have such nitpicky stuff, but I was always forgetting to do it. And it's part of the job. It's like every single day, that part of the job does not change. You have to turn in A, B, and C. It might be a different story, but still these elements, A, B, and C, sometimes D, E, and F, have to be turned in every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. And I would just forget to do the stuff, So I was getting yelled at all the time, like in the newsroom. This is what you'd hear. Stacey, where's your out cue? Stacey, how long is this story? Or if I was out in the field, I would hear it in my ear, Stacey. I'm like, oh my God, So I'm starting to feel like, man, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Because, your coworkers start looking at you like, she's stupid. What's going on? Like, what is her problem? Well, that's what I was thinking they were thinking. But you start to get a little shade from your coworkers when they're the ones having to pick up the slack, And so I was starting to get really depressed, like deeply depressed. Like I didn't want to go to work anymore, depressed. And I was talking to a friend. I can't remember who the friend was, but they were like, well, does your health insurance cover, therapy sessions? And I'd never thought about going to therapy. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I'll do that. I wasn't opposed to it. And so my insurance paid for exactly 12 sessions. And I had a female therapist. I can't remember her name now, but she was wonderful. She was very insightful. She was always asking, it seemed, the right questions and was always getting me to ask myself the right questions. And I believe probably around maybe the 4th or 5th session, she had suggested to me, after being all up in my business, that maybe, have you considered you might have ADD? And this was like 1995, 1996. So it wasn't ADHD, it was ADD. And I was like, I don't really remember what I thought, specifically, but I just kind of remember feeling like, no, I never thought of that. And what is that? And isn't that something white kids, it wasn't something I was connecting to at all. But she did prescribe Ritalin to me. And I don't remember getting information from her about what ADD actually is, and if she told me, I forgot. It just did not resonate. If she told me, not saying she didn't, but if she did, it did not resonate. So I'm thinking, oh, great, I'll take this pill and everything's going to be fine at work. So I'm like, got my magic pills, and so I'm taking the magic pills, but there was no magic. Nothing was happening. I don't even remember feeling any side effects. Like, I don't remember feeling hyped up on it. I don't remember feeling anything on it. And so I just assumed that because my problems didn't disappear, I was still hearing my name yelled out across the newsroom pretty much every day. Say, I'm like, well, guess I don't have ADD because these pills surely don't work. And then, Eric, I just went on about life. I literally just filed that diagnosis away somewhere deep in my brain. And I literally forgot that I had this diagnosis. I just didn't think about it again. But of course, the condition does not forget about you. So yes, 20 something years later, I have paid many taxes on this ADHD thing. And all the while having the answers, but not remembering that I had the answers, but always asking myself, what's wrong with me? Oh,
that question is always the biggest, stinging question when, you're like, what's wrong with you? It's like, it's like the question that goes right to your heart and soul of I don't know.
Yes. Yes. So, every time you get that negative feedback, which for me, it was a lot, not just in the workplace, whatever workplace that happened to be that I hadn't gotten fired from yet. But it was like in my interpersonal relationships, just not being able to really connect with people who I'm guessing wanted to be friends, but it was like I would never really know how to meet them where they were. I always found myself overcompensating around people, performing almost in front of people. And then especially at work, every time I'd get a new job. And just to clarify, when I was in news, I was almost fired from my first 2 jobs, but didn't quite get there because I got a new job before I got fired from the last one. And then the 3rd news job that I had, they were about to fire everybody because we had gone through a sale, our station, but they fired me first. Holla! They fired me first. And that's when I learned pink slips are not pink. Okay. Pink slips are not pink. So yeah, I just, I was having the same issues no matter what workplace I was in. Same issues. And even my news director at my 3rd and final news station told me, Stacey, the devil's in the details for you. The devil's in the details. And, I was like, yeah, but I don't know why. I don't know what to do about it. It was like, no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't get it, Eric. I just couldn't remember. Sometimes I would, Like I could go a week and get it all right. And then they would be like, oh, finally Stacey's doing it right. And then the next week it would just like all fall apart again. So it was so inconsistent, you know? So I just felt like they weren't trusting me because they didn't know how I was going to perform on any given day behind the scenes. In front of the camera, they were never worried, you know, because that was the part that I did well, you know, being out, you know, interviewing people and, you know, putting together the story and writing and presenting it. That part was always the part that saved me. It was just the stuff that drove the coworkers crazy.
Yeah.
That always tripped me up, the details. So, yeah.
So what was that story that you were telling yourself about since you had forgotten that you were diagnosed? About
when did I remember?
Yeah, but like when you're getting all this feedback, like what was the belief that you had about why you were having these difficulties?
That I wasn't qualified to be in that particular workspace, you know, that everybody was smarter than me, or everybody knew something that I didn't, or everybody had figured out something that I hadn't figured out. You know, like I was just always overcompensating. Like if I was always trying to prove I belonged there, you know, which oftentimes meant I was putting my foot in my mouth or giving away information I shouldn't be giving away just to make me look like, you know, wow, Stacey's really got the inside track on that stuff, you know, or, you know, and I would often get like advice from like even my own mother one day told me, you know, you don't have to tell everything you know just because you know it, you know? And I'm like, well, she goes, sometimes you need to keep things to yourself. And she was talking about within the professional realm too. She was like, sometimes you don't have to tell everything you know just because you know it. And I kind of heard her, but I didn't really hear her. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just felt like I had all these disparate parts that were kind of missing each other. You know, like I felt like I had all the pieces I need. I just didn't know how to put them together. So yeah, I just felt like I'm either unqualified to be here, everybody's smarter than me, or, you know, maybe I'm just, I don't know. Was I a minority hire? You know, stuff like that, you know, I just felt bad about myself. And the funny thing is when I started out, I felt really confident about myself because I had not had any issues. You know, everything that I would need to support me was there in high school, pretty much in college. I mean, looking back, I can see the challenges I had in college, but they were masked pretty well because there was still a lot of structure in college, you know. But I didn't have a lot of friends in college. You know, I was pretty much a loner. So, you know, that should have been a clue there.
So at what point then did you go back to seek out an evaluation, or to how did you come to the point where you went back to get re-diagnosed?
Well, that was a little less than a year ago, Eric. And we're talking about 23, 24 years now of having the same issues over and over. And me truly believing that if I just made more money, all my money issues would disappear. If I just had the perfect job where I didn't have to like worry about paperwork and details, then my life would be better. Like there was always, if this were happening, then my life will get better, you know, but nothing's perfect, right? Nothing is perfect. I mean, maybe I've had 2 or 3 perfect jobs. But I kept waiting for that magical thing to happen, or, oh, I'll grow out of this, whatever this is. And I've been divorced now. My ex-husband did not understand me one iota. Like he was always reminding me, you get your phone, you remember your keys, you remember this, you remember that. So I don't think with him actually knowing what I had, he knew, you know what I'm saying? But he was so frustrated all the time. Like, you know, he was always telling me there was something wrong with the way my brain worked. There was something wrong with how I saw the world. Like, you're too chatty. Why do you have to talk to everybody? You just talk to strangers all the time and just tell them all but like that drove him nuts because he's the exact opposite, right? Everything has to be just like in a little box for him. Like, it's right, just perfect, like right there. And me, I'm just like, blah, you know? So we were always at odds, and we just thought we had personality differences. But now looking back, I see that was the ADHD and him not being ADHD. And so between the divorce and the multiple failings at getting fired at jobs that even a monkey can do, in my opinion, you know, I was just feeling really bad about myself, Eric. Like I'd lost all hope. Like I'd come out here to LA to be an actor, to pursue, further acting opportunities because I'd been acting in New York a little bit. And I just felt like, man, I blow it at auditions a lot because I'll get in the room and I'll just forget everything that I had rehearsed. I would just go in and I thought it was stage fright. And maybe some of it is nerves, but I didn't have the confidence in myself to go, I got this. It was like I would go in and could not remember a word of anything. And I would have the script right there, and I'm like, God, what is wrong with my brain? I must be getting Alzheimer's or something, And I was just distraught. And I wasn't contemplating, doing something bad to myself because of my religious beliefs, but I could see how people would, like I was starting to understand how people can get to that place where they don't feel like there's any hope left, where they felt like, I would just be better off not being here, or the people around me who are always picking up the slack, or, always saving my ass, people are having to, help me pay my rent here and there, my family. Like I was feeling like a burden to everybody. I was feeling like a burden to my family. I was feeling like a burden to like friends. I was feeling like just a burden. Like I wasn't contributing everything. So I was talking to my therapist about it. And my therapist, she's not well versed in ADHD. So she never suggested it. Nothing against her, but she never suggested it. I'll tell you what brought me back around to it. This is going to sound weird. So bear with me. And this is not an exaggeration.
We like what you hear.
Okay. So, that's what we do. ADHD people have weird stories, right? Just weird stories. Okay. So, as I mentioned, I'm a Christian, so I have spiritual beliefs. And so I pray, I pray. And I hike every morning as well. And so, oh man, I don't remember the date, but it was in February of last year. I'd gone hiking especially early. And I'd gotten to the top part of Runyon, and I was looking out over the city and just thinking how much I hate LA and everything sucks. My life sucks. And, like, what am I doing here? And I just prayed. And I'm like, I know I need tools. I know I need some kind of structured discipline is what I was calling it at the time. Because I'd been listening to a lot of Tony Robbins and a lot of YouTube stuff about you got to be disciplined. So I'm like, I just need discipline. Maybe I should join the army. I don't know. And so I'm like, well, what is that? And I was trying to like break apart what is discipline to me. So I was starting to understand it without the context of understanding it. And I was like, I just need some tools, I guess. I don't know. So I started praying. I was like, God, please show me what is going on with me. What is going on with me? And just show me a toolbox with my name on it, with some tools in it that I know how to use. And I think I've gotten that whole toolbox concept from like, I don't know who I got it from, to be honest, because I wasn't like doing any research about ADHD at that point, but I somehow had this toolbox in my head, like with my name on it. So that was that. And Eric, I'm not making this thing. People think I make up stuff because I'm a comedian. And, you like exaggerate things for, comedic purposes. This is the truth. This is the truth. I know truth is a slippery term in our society these days, but this is what happened as I remember it. It was either that night or the next night. I was flipping through Netflix. And do you remember that Ted Bundy documentary that Netflix had about the Ted Bundy tapes?
I think I remember seeing it like on my list, but I don't think I've ever watched it.
Okay. So I'm flipping through Netflix and I had something else to do, but I was procrastinating. And so I saw the Ted Bundy tapes and I'm like, Ted Bundy. Yeah, he was a good looking dude. What was his deal? What was his deal? So I watched the first episode with the intention of just watching the first episode. And I was going to get back to whatever it was I was supposed to be doing. But then I was hooked. And so I binge watched all 4 episodes. And what kept me coming back is what people were saying about Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy had so much potential. What happened? He could have been anything. We don't know what happened to Ted. Ted was a good looking guy. Ted was intelligent. Ted was smart. Ted could have been anything he wanted. Just what happened to him? He had so much potential. And that kept ringing in my head because that's what, in my mind, people were saying about me. Stacey had so much potential. Stacey's so pretty and Stacey's smart. What happened to Stacey? She just went off the rails, And in my head, I'm thinking, yeah, that's what my family's thinking. That's what my friends are thinking. That's what I was thinking. And so I literally did a Google search. What was up with Ted Bundy? Could Ted Bundy had been helped with medication? Because I'm certain to think, man, he was a sociopath. Maybe that's my problem. Maybe I'm a sociopath. Eric, my head was like all over the place because I'm like trying to find answers, right? I'm like literally trying to find answers about myself. And I'm like, maybe
Google your symptoms, including the key phrase Ted Bundy. What could go wrong there?
Yes. Ted Bundy, could he have been helped with medication? Because I'm thinking maybe I'm a psychopath too or something. Because in my mind, people were saying the same thing about me that they were saying about Ted Bundy.
Okay.
So that's where it starts. So could Ted Bundy have been helped with medication? And then there was all this speculation that Ted Bundy had this, Ted Bundy had that, Ted Bundy may have had ADHD. And so I clicked on, I'm sure, had to be something dealing with ADHD, because then after about 2 or 3 more clicks, guess where I ended up? On the website for Chad. And not just on the website for Chad, but on the page with all the symptoms of ADHD right there in my face. And so I'm sitting there and I'm reading all the symptoms and I'm just like, ding, 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 ding. Like all of that's me. Ding, ding. And like the more dings with the, the check marks and the boxes going off, like all the way down the list, I just started crying like hot tears because I'm like, this is what's going on with me. And then I took it to my therapist, my next appointment, and she's like, well, people don't get diagnosed with ADD as an adult. Like, she doesn't know anything. And then when she said that brought back my memory of being diagnosed like 24 years ago. And so that's what brought me back around to the diagnosis. So I didn't get re-diagnosed. I just remembered I had a diagnosis. And so that's when I was ready to do something about it, because I'm like, I'm not living another day like this. So thank you, Ted Bundy.
That's I don't know how many times that's ever been said. I'm guessing probably not many.
I don't mean to like diminish, the things he did to people, but I truly believe that was God's way of answering my prayer.
I get it. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue the story.
Okay.
So we will be right back. I hope you are enjoying this podcast, and if this is your first time listening, welcome to ADHD Rewired. We are not only a podcast, but we are a community. We will be announcing our registration kickoff date soon for this summer's online video-based coaching and accountability groups. Registration is by invitation only. Come join our 10-week session that starts July 13th and goes through September 18th. If you are looking for an intense coaching group that will help you not only plan more effectively, but live a more wholehearted and joyous life, join us now. Don't hesitate, because our coaching groups fill up and you don't want to miss out. Go to coachingrewired.com and click on the big blue button to be added to our summer coaching group interest list. You might be stuck inside, but you are not alone. Remember, you do have to click on that big blue button to get an invitation. Then you will be sent a save the date email, and invitations will go out in mid-May. So to get your invitation to our kickoff registration event, go to coachingrewired.com and click on the big blue button. Our coaching groups fill up fast each season, so don't wait. See what our intensive coaching and accountability groups are all about. Listen to members recount their stories at coachingrewired.com.
This group is like a boot camp for people who refuse to let go of their dreams because of their neurodiversity.
That's coachingrewired.com. This podcast is brought to you by our patrons over at patreon.com/ADHD Rewired. And I want to thank all the patrons who help make this podcast possible with your contributions. I appreciate all of you who are listening and who can financially support this podcast. If you can't give financially, consider leaving me a rating and review on your podcast provider, or share a podcast episode in your favorite online social group. All of your support is appreciated. For those of you who can give at a $25 a month level, you can join our monthly coaching call. If you're listening to this on the day it came out, Our next group coaching call is today, Tuesday, April 28th at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Consider giving at the $25 a month level and join us. Our group coaching calls for our patrons are every fourth Tuesday of the month at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. To become a patron, go to adhdrewired.com/Patreon. Patreon is Patreon. That's adhdrewired.com/Patreon. And thanks. All right, we are back. And so we left off. You were thanking Ted Bundy for the rabbit hole that led you to rediscover your ADHD.
Yes.
Diagnosis.
And again, I don't want to diminish all of his crimes because he was a heinous person. Okay. I don't want to say, Ted Bundy healed me or anything like that. I just wanted to say
that could be like a t-shirt, but then on the back it would say, it's a long story.
Yeah, I know, right? But I just want to say that God works in mysterious ways. I'll just put it that way because a prayer that I made, I really feel like he answered it by sending me down that rabbit hole.
So let me ask you this. So one of the things that you said for why you wanted to come on the show was that you wanted to educate specifically Black women about issues around this. Now, it is no secret that in the African American community and other minority communities, that just issues around mental health, there is just a great deal of stigma around these kinds of issues. How was this, when you shared this with your family, with friends, what was the response?
Okay. So I got a lot of different responses. I have a few friends who have known me for a very long time because, I took some time to really digest what that meant. Like, I have this diagnosis that I never did anything about. Let me start educating myself on what this actually is. And so it took me a few weeks to start telling people. And so when I finally did, I told some, people have known me for a long time and their reaction was, duh.
We thought you knew, Stacey.
Yeah, you didn't know? Congratulations. We were just like, that's just so Stacey, flaky Stacey, Spacey Stacey. Now, those are the nicknames I had, by the way. Spacey Stacey, flaky Stacey, that's so Stacey. But then when I started telling people who I haven't known as long, who have been on the other side of my, I won't say bad behavior, but on the other side of me being late all the time or not showing up or, just not conducting my way in a specific way that they think I should conduct myself. Like, they don't think I should walk into a room full of people and be like, hey, I'm here, So this particular person, I won't name her, she and I have been friends maybe about 5 years. And we had been having some issues between us for the last year or so prior to the remembering of the diagnosis. So I'm like, hey, can we have coffee and talk about some things? So I wanted to disclose to her what I'd been going through and to apologize for the things that may have hurt her that was unintentional and explain to her why based on what I was learning about the disorder. And my reaction from her was, well, everyone has challenges. Everyone is late. Everyone has ADD sometimes. I have ADD sometimes, just try harder. Like, I kept getting the try harder thing. Like, my friend was a Navy SEAL and my friend, he wakes up in pain every day, but he just pushes through it. You just have to push through it, just try harder. You don't need a pill for this and that. I don't take drugs, blah, blah. Oh, I just got the whole, that's all made up. that whole thing's just a made up thing and it's an excuse.
Sitting there with your friend, how was your response? What were you?
I felt unseen. I felt unheard. I felt completely dismissed. Things that I was starting to feel anyway prior to me remembering this diagnosis. But it was even the fact that I am telling her this is the reason why I'm having challenges that are affecting you, and I am sorry, and I'll do what I can to change what I know hurts you, to hear her be completely dismissive and tell me to try harder, I was hurt. I want
to commend you for having that conversation, though.
Thank you. And I was on a high at that point. I was so happy to get that diagnosis, Eric. Like, I had been walking on clouds for a couple of weeks. And so she really just kind of let the air out of my balloon, to be honest. I mean, like, I kind of had a little setback. Like, I went into a little bit of a depression after that conversation. And my therapist was very encouraging. You know, like, there are going to be people who, you know, don't understand it. You know, she's like, there will be people who will just be like, don't tell me your problem. And she's like, just maybe it's time to let that relationship go. So I did. And it was very hurtful. And in my mind, I'd like to come back around to that relationship, but I don't know if there's a place that we can actually meet in the middle if she's not going to. And I even kept sending her information. Like, I was sending her Jessica's, McCabe's YouTube channel, you know, some of the easily digestible things about what ADHD is. I was sending her all of the things that are out there that make ADHD easily understandable in a humorous way. Right. So she wouldn't feel like I was just dumping like literature on her. Right. And I never heard anything back from her about it, you know? So I just felt like, you know, if she really loved me, she would want to understand what I'm going through and she would listen to these things.
It's one of my favorite lines from Brene Brown is that it's not our job to be the asshole whisperer.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, true. You can try to disclose and try to help someone understand, but if they, you know, people don't want to understand, you can't shove understanding down someone's throat.
Yeah, that's true. And the funny thing is, knowing the symptoms now and knowing how it looks in women specifically, I feel like she might actually have
it. Your friend, you're saying. Yeah.
Yes.
You know, and I don't think that's that uncommon either. The people who are, you know, when I used to have my clinical practice, and I would, it was often the dad. They're like, my kid can't have ADHD, you know, because he can sit on that video game for 7 hours without moving. And I was like, you know, that's not actually normal, right? And I would see the way that the dad would be showing up and be like, you probably think this is really normal because it reminds you a lot of you. And that's what this is.
Yeah. So, and when I presented that to her, she was just like, I didn't get much of a response to that. But she goes, even if I did, I still would just try harder and not take medication. Like, she's very anti-medication. She's very, you know, she's a non-vaxxer. So anyway.
Say no more.
Yes.
And I know that there is a rather actually disturbing history in the African-American community about psychiatric medications.
Yes. And I wanted to get around to me disclosing it to my family. And when I say my family, I really mean my mother, my sister, my aunt, and my brother, in that order. And just a really quick history about me and my family history. I was raised by my mother's parents. My mother had a lot of drama in her life that just kind of precluded her from being able to provide a stable environment for me at the time I was born. So her parents, my grandparents, adopted me when I was still a toddler. So they raised me. So they're my mom and dad. And so they're no longer with us. And my mother and I have not had an easy relationship at all my entire life, because not only, you know, did I grow up knowing that she raised my older brother and my younger sister, you know, why didn't she raise me? So there was that in the back of my head my whole life. So that was like a little bit of, I guess, not just abandonment issues that I hadn't addressed for a long time, but just kind of feeling like, well, what was wrong with me? Was I damaged goods? And it wasn't something that I was like consciously thinking about as a child, but I just know that I was always angry at her when I was little, you know? And that carried on up until last year. So she and I have never had a conversation that didn't just kind of go to blows almost immediately. And so when I rediscovered my diagnosis, I told my mother, and my mother was so profoundly interested in everything I had to say about it, because she thinks that she has it. And I'm like, yeah, I think you do too. Matter of fact, if you don't have it, nobody has it. Because knowing her history now and the choices she's made, you know, a lot of impulsive choices, just fucked up shit. Sorry, can I say that on your podcast? Just a lot of things that are symptomatic of ADHD that people who don't have it probably would make the same choices, which directly impacted who raised me, you know? Yeah. So She and I have not had an argument since I disclosed this to her.
And it has to be so healing.
You know what, Eric? If I benefit in no other way other than the fact that I have been able to forgive my mother almost instantaneously when I understood that her challenges are my challenges and my challenges are her challenges, I'm happy because, you know, she's getting on up there. She's getting up in age. And I think the things about her that I've always just like, just irritated me are the things that irritate me about myself, because it's you're so impulsive. You can't show up anywhere on time. You know, like I remember one year I flew into Chicago and she was to pick me up at the airport. She was almost 2 hours late, you know, and she was so nonchalant about it. Just like, well, you know, it's not a bad place to wait. You know, I'm just like, you don't care about anybody's time. You know, it's like the same stuff that I do to people, you know, but I was hating her for it. And so, yes, that has been very healing, just very cathartic, not only in repairing that relationship between us, but me like forgiving myself for all the stuff that I thought was wrong with me all these years, you know, like things that I had come to accept as character flaws about myself. You know, like, maybe I'm a sociopath. I don't know. You know, like, no, Stacey, you're not a freaking sociopath. You know, you're not a Ted Bundy who just doesn't kill people. You know, it's like everything that I had really come to hate about myself, I was just almost instantaneously able to forgive it. So it's been very cathartic for my self-esteem, for my ability to like myself again. And, you know, like I said, my mother and I haven't had a single argument, not a single argument since I disclosed this to her. And she's always interested about how my treatment's coming along, what the medication's like, what it's like to be on it. And then, of course, my mother being my mother, she told my sister, and my sister calls me and she goes, "Hey, how's it going?" Like real, like, you know, gentle. And I'm like, "It's going fine. Mom told me what's going on with you." I'm like, "Oh, good, good." She goes, "Yeah. So what's it like to be bipolar?" And I'm like, "Mom told you I'm bipolar?" "Yeah." I'm like, "She got it wrong."
Oh my gosh.
So my mother has been telling everybody I'm bipolar because she couldn't remember the ADHD.
Oh my gosh. Too many letters, right?
I'm now having to go back and be like, okay, I'm not bipolar. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's a. And everybody's like, "Oh, that's so your mother." Yeah, because she gets everything all just confused,
jumbled.
So people are like, "Oh, that makes sense." Okay.
So when you clarify with your sister, how did that conversation go?
She's been very supportive, extremely supportive, because I think it helps her to put into context, you know, our mother's behavior, because she grew up with our mother, you know, so she was there firsthand every day for it. So it's helped her, I think, in understanding our mother too. My older brother, he's got it, like he's got all of it, like on the extreme end of the spectrum, the hyperactivity, the, you know, physically and mentally, and he saw a lot of bad stuff growing up too, because his father was abusive towards our mom. So he's got a lot of unresolved issues that he is working on now. But when I told him, just a few months ago, actually, he was very interested too. And he was like, you know, my therapist was saying that I should like really look into that too. And so it's been healing, or it's been a step towards healing for some people in my family.
Let's do this. Let's take a step towards our next break. Sometimes my transitions are really corny.
That's okay.
And we will be right back. This week on Hacking Your ADHD, Will discusses cleaning house. You ever wonder why some people can keep their house clean and others, well, check out Hacking Your ADHD with Will Kerb this week and every Monday. Join Will as he explores ways that you can work with your ADHD brain to do more of the things that you want to do, like clean your house or maybe need to do. I'm not sure if you want to do that. Subscribe to these short, mindful ways to hack your ADHD. Go to hackingYourADHD.com for show notes and to subscribe. And every Friday, check out ADHD Essentials, the podcast with Brendan Mahan. At ADHD Essentials, they help families develop the skills and knowledge needed to better manage ADHD. His recent guests have been Alan Brown from Adhd Crusher and How to Power Up Your Kid's Brain, and a podcast with a COVID Q&A with ADHD coaches Lilly Weeks and Tyra Todd. Go to ADHDessentials.com to learn more. Both Hacking Your ADHD and ADHD Essentials are both part of the ADHD Rewired podcast network, available to everyone, everywhere you consume podcasts. Mark your calendars to join us for our next live Q&A. You can join me, Brendan Mahan from ADHD Essentials, and Will Curb, the host of Hacking Your ADHD, as we answer your questions live. We do this every second Tuesday of the month at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern for an hour of live Q&A. When you are registered, you can ask your questions during the live Q&A. Register for free at ADHDrewired.com/events. That's ADHDrewired.com/events. Our next live Q&A is on Tuesday, May 12th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. We hope to see you there. All right, we are back. And so you want to help educate specifically women in the African-American community.
Yes.
What do you think is needed for that to take place, for more people? And really, I mean, I think about just a lot of the underserved minority communities. You know, you go to these like the ADHD conference every year, and it's typically a sea of white people, right? Yeah. And it's
that's
like,
what I've read.
And it's mind boggling because this is not something that, you know, discriminates based on what color your skin is.
Yes. Well, obviously there's a lack of information out there. The information's there. It's just not getting to everybody, you know? So I think that, it wasn't even getting to me. I had to go search it out after remembering a 2 decades old diagnosis, you know? So I think what is needed is for people to see somebody that looks like them who's talking about it, to connect with it. Because, like if all of my examples of this disorder are people who look like you, and no offense to you, but I'm not male, nor am I Caucasian. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
it's like, well, how does that relate to my life? And I just remember about 10 years ago, I've been in and out of therapy for 20 years. And, nobody in all that time, except for that one psychiatrist when I was 24, 25, suggested that maybe your problems are because of ADHD. Not a single one, Eric. Not even the one I'm seeing today. It's like, don't you people, this is your job. Why am I, relying on my faulty memory of some diagnosis that I didn't even take seriously, doing your job? So that was very irritating to me. But I remember about 10 years ago, I was talking to my aunt, who's very much like my mother. It's my sister's, my mother's younger sister. I was telling her that I was in therapy at that time because I was depressed. Like I've been, in and out of a level of depression for a very long time, mostly because of this, the symptoms and what it was doing to my life without knowing why. And she says to me, well, I don't know how I'd feel about seeing a therapist. I'll just pray. Jesus is my therapist. I'll just pray, and that was like, well, if that works for you, that's great. But I pray all the time, and it's like, maybe I'm not asking the right questions. I don't know. Maybe I needed to ask that one question about the toolboxes. I don't know. But that's what it is. Like, that's not all of it, obviously, but I feel like and I can't speak about all African Americans because we're not a monolith, but it's been my experience, and I did grow up in the church, that nobody was talking about their issues. And you know that there were things going on, like I had a best friend her mother left their family, left a house full of small children, you know, in the care of their dad to raise because she was having a breakdown, you know, and I don't even know what they called it back then, but she went to go, you know, live somewhere else, you know, or another family member that lived down the road, distant cousins, but they were in our church too. Their mom left the family to go and, you know, find herself or whatever, you know, and left the dad to raise these kids by themselves. And so everybody's like, you know, oh, these dads, oh, they're such good men. They were, you know, the women were being vilified, you know, vilified, you know, oh, these women. I couldn't imagine leaving my children. Oh, these men, oh, just godly men, just raising their, you know, and when you're young, that makes you think, oh, then they're bad people. When in fact, they probably had mental health issues, you know? And it's like, nobody talks about it, you know? Like, I mean, I can think of like 5 people in my church off the top of my head where it was the woman, the mom, who was having some sort of issue and it ran in their family and everybody just accepted it. Oh, well, you know, her mom went crazy. That's what they called it too. Her mom went crazy and her mom went crazy, you know? So it was just kind of like, but nobody talked about it. And it's like, why? Talk about it, you know, put it out there so that somebody can help you. And I think it's just, we sweep too many of our issues under the rug, not just mental health issues, but, you know, homosexuality, that gets swept under the rug. You know, nobody wants to talk about that, or just anything that makes you look weak, you know, and I kind of get it. Like, because I grew up with my grandparents, I kind of grew up old, you know, like I kind of grew up with an old mindset. And that generation, you know, that World War II generation, that Jim Crow generation, they didn't talk about their problems. You know, you just keep a stiff upper lip, keep your opinions to yourself, and you just keep your head down and keep moving forward, you know? So when I think about it, my grandfather probably had ADHD. You know, now in the context of my memory of his behavior and what I know about ADHD, that man used to keep like little memo pads all over the place, just writing down like reminders to himself. He'd carry like pen, oh my God. And he was just like, go, go, go all the time. And my grandmother would be like, you just like your granddaddy. You just want to go, go, go all the time. I can never get him to sit still. Can't get you to sit still either. You know, what is that? You know? So yeah, but obviously they didn't have a name for it back then. And my grandmother, she was depressed. And, you know, she would complain to the family, oh, cancer's killing me. She never had cancer, by the way. My whole life, she was dying of cancer in her head. Just like, oh, this cancer's killing me. Like, what cancer? It's all over. And she lived to be 95, Eric. She never had cancer. But she was depressed, you know? She was depressed. And when my aunts and uncles were growing up under her, they were like, there were some days she didn't even get out of bed, you know? So there's just too much silence. And my cousin and I were talking about that a couple of days ago. There's just too much silence in the African-American community that we take for granted, is that that's just the way things have to be, but it doesn't, because silence will kill you. You know, silence doesn't help you.
As we,
I'm sorry, that was an awkward pause. I have a lot of those in conversations.
The awkward pause following silence will kill you.
Yeah. You know what? Even my mother, before I got my memory of my diagnosis, when I was going through my divorce, I mean, I'm going to put it out there. I don't make a lot of money. You know, I'll go through phases where I do make a lot of money, and then I'll be like, I got money. You know, I'm just like, money. And then like the next day, I don't have any money. But when I was going through my divorce, I filed, and I needed an attorney because he was going to be a jerk about it. And so the retainer fee was like $3,000 or something. Well, I didn't have $3,000. He wasn't going to, you know, pay the $3,000. And so I'm like, well, you know, my grandparents have passed, and if they'd been around, they would have given it to me. No questions asked. But I had to go to my mother, who she and I had not, you know, reconciled at all at that point. And I told her what I was going through. And she was just like, well, I don't know if I want to pay for your divorce. This is a woman who's had 3 divorces, by the way. But she was like being judgy and just like, you know, you just should just keep a stiff upper lip and just get through it. Just get through it. So I'm like, thanks, Mom. So I went on Facebook and started like a GoFundMe page for my divorce. And like, she got wind of it. She got wind of it from somebody in the family. And then she calls me back. Why are you putting your business on Facebook? And I'm like, because I need the money. And she's like, you shouldn't just put all your personal business and tell people your problems. Just put your problems out there for anyone to see. She's like, you should have some more dignity about yourself. She's like, I'm giving you this money. Take that off Facebook. Just like, Black women don't do that.
Really? She actually said that?
Yes.
Wow.
Black women don't do that. Wow. She's like, you keep some dignity about yourself.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So it seems. So you use humor obviously as a coping mechanism.
Yes. I didn't know I was, but yes. I mean, I didn't know until I remember this diagnosis that, that's been my go-to.
But it also seems that could be a really powerfully disarming way to communicate with others about these kinds of things.
Well, yes. And I do want to incorporate humor into my advocacy that I'm starting, because I feel like that's probably the easiest way for people to accept it. You know, the whole put a little honey with the medicine or whatever, sugar with, what did Mary Poppins say? Whatever she said.
A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
What that white lady say?
So what do you see yourself doing as you're in your first year of real, like, you're really addressing this. You started taking medication, although you said you forgot to take it today.
I didn't forget. I ran out. I guess I forgot. If you want to say I forgot to get my prescription into the pharmacy before I took that last pill.
If it makes you feel any better, Stacey, usually once every 4 or 5 months, I get caught by that too, where I'm like, wait a minute. Oh no, I don't have any left. And then I got to wait for my doctor. And I'm like, using my like old, immediate release Adderall, which is just not the same for what I need.
Oh, well, at least you have like a standby stash. I don't even have a standby stash.
So, and I help people with this for a living, and I've been working on this for a long time, and that happens to me sometimes too. So. Yeah.
Okay. But you know what? It's been interesting being unmedicated for the last it's been a few days now, like since Sunday. And I don't know. I feel like without the medication, I have noticed that some things I have been practicing, some cognitive things I've been practicing over the past year are kind of sticking. So there are some moments when I was on the verge of making some really bad choices. And then I stopped myself and said, you know what? That's probably not the best route. And I pulled myself back. Whereas I believe a year ago, I'd have just been like,
Hey, look at that. So I have breaks.
I'm glad to see that, I've been able to get some things in place, through systems and whatnot that are sticking even when I'm not medicated. So
are you still active in your church?
Well, the church that I went to as a kid, that's in Alabama. That's where I was born and raised. And I've tried to get involved in church in the communities I've lived in over the years. I was active here since I've been in LA in a church that I found. But I haven't honestly been to church in the last 2 years or so. I do want to get back in, and I'm not having like an issue with the church or anything. It's just, I have a very, transient lifestyle. So I have like 80 side hustles, and sometimes those jobs, or maybe I'm in classes or whatever, will fall on a Sunday, and I'll choose those over going to church. So
like the reason I was asking is, would you consider reaching out to your church to see if you can maybe talk to the congregation about ADHD or?
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is what I ideally see happening for myself. I'm working on starting a YouTube channel. I've just written the first episode, or roughly, I've written the first draft of the episode, and I'm going to incorporate sketch comedy, nothing too elaborate, just sketch comedy dealing with a specific symptom that I'll be talking about in that episode. And then I'll, talk about, all of it as as it relates to me, and then obviously put out some facts, some solid information out there. I don't want the episodes to be too long because nobody's got that kind of attention span, even non-ADHD people. Like, that's the thing I hate about some of the podcasts.
Like mine.
Well, no, not. I'll be like, this is an hour long? Who's got that kind of time? So I'll put it on like the 2 times, where the podcast plays it twice.
Stacey, it's funny. So I have talked to people who typically will listen to me at 1.5 or 2 times speed. And they're like, and then they actually talk to me and they're like, it's so painful, Eric. Like, I want to speed you up. And it's I get it. It's when people are like, I can't stand an hour long podcast. What? Don't you know we have ADHD? And I'm like, well, if it's a high interest area, you're going to wish it was longer, so it's, so I get it. Which is,
sometimes, you like listen to it on a car ride or commute. Yeah. Maybe your commute's not an hour long. Maybe your commute's only 20 minutes long.
So, we are wrapping up here at the end. What do you want to leave listeners with?
Well, I'll leave you with this. I do audience warm up, and the latest show that I've been doing warm up for, A Little Late with Lilly Singh, we wrapped in December. But that was the first warm up gig I've had since I remembered and started treating my ADHD. So since I had a platform, albeit small, in front of an audience full of multicultural people, I always incorporated into my warm-up the message, this is what I'm going through. Here's some funny shit about it that's happened to me. I always make it humorous, but then I put a button on it. Just if you're having trouble, especially Black women, if you are having challenges, problems, there's no shame in talking about this. Because for the longest time, my secret shame, Eric, was the fact that I've been fired from so many jobs. Like, I would not tell anybody that. Like, that was something I would not dare tell you that I've probably been fired from about 16 or 17 jobs total, like, what the is wrong with you? That was my secret shame. And so now I talk about that, and it's like, this is why. So you're not alone. So I've gotten so much positive feedback just in that very small arena of people getting on my Instagram page who were like in the audience that day saying, thank you for talking about that. This is real. I even had a white kid who was working in production, 27 years old, came up to me at our wrap party, and he started telling me how much he appreciated the fact that I was so willing to talk about my challenges in front of basically the whole building, because everybody in the studio can hear me all over the building when I'm doing my warm-up. And he was telling me that he had been diagnosed when he was a kid, but wasn't medicated anymore since he'd been out of college. And he says he has watched pretty much every day his life start to unravel, just thread by thread, because his challenges. And he started crying to me, Eric, crying in this bar. And I thought to myself, you are the first person that would get treated. You are the first person that teachers would look at and say, this kid probably needs some Adderall or something. So if somebody like him is suffering silently, coming to me saying, thank you for talking about this, then I can't even imagine how many more people who aren't even like, just Black women are silently suffering with this and just need somebody to connect with, so that's why I'm doing it. And, God knows I'd love to get rich off something one of these days. That would be great. But this is the first thing that I've ever pursued where monetization wasn't the first thing that popped in my head. So I know it's the right thing for me to be doing.
And from my experience, when you're doing something that really is purpose-driven and heart-driven with a real cause, it's providing for others and changing other people's lives that you get taken care of, and it's hard work, but it's meaningful work, and it sounds like you are on a really good path to what you're doing right now.
I appreciate it. And I'm just getting started in this. So, I need some mentors. I need, people to reach out to myself, because I don't know everything, obviously. I just know what I know right now. And I would love it if you'd be my big brother, my mentor sometime.
Well, let's absolutely, we'll connect again offline here, and we can talk about what that would look like.
Yes. And when I get my YouTube channel started, would you like to be a guest on my thing?
Absolutely. I would.
That would be amazing.
I'd be honored.
Yeah, I think I'm calling it ADHD is the new black. I think that's what I'm calling it.
I like it. I do like it. ADHD is the new black.
Yeah. Don't steal that, world. It's mine.
Before I put that out there, you should go buy that domain.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't think about that.
Like, right when we get off of this call, like before I go hop on it and be like, all right, Stacey, you got to pay me for it. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Troll.
Stacey Machelle, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story. It's an inspiration and hopefully will help a lot of other people. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for the work that you do, Eric, because you've definitely just listening to your podcast. I listen to it every week. Every single week. And I'm now listening to that podcast, the Hack Your ADHD, that new one. You are definitely doing God's work too, even though I don't know your religious beliefs, but it's there and it's helping. Trust me.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. We'll take care.
Thank you, Eric. You too.
This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find summaries and additional resources for each episode. You can apply to our free and secret Facebook community. You can learn more about ADHD Rewired's intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups and sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content you won't get anywhere else. It's all at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click the Patreon button. If you're a regular listener and you're still listening to my voice, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron through our Patreon page. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to listeners, but it is not free to produce. And patrons get really cool perks. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHDrewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. You can also subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube. And you can subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube and see select interviews and some other videos I've posted. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends and your family and your clients, as well as your coaches, therapists, and doctors. And if you're a coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader, and you would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at my website, ADHDrewired.com. And if you're a member of CHAD or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this podcast. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. You know, you might be the person that turns somebody on to a podcast for the very first time. And if you really love this episode, please consider hitting share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I count on you to help me spread the message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and to help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or any other podcast app that accepts ratings and reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe on this podcast on your podcast app so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Not sure where to start? In no particular order. Check out Atomic Habits by James Clear, The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk, 10% Happier, and Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics. These are both by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions and Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Vaden. The Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. Do you have trouble asking for help? Listen to The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. It's one of the best produced audiobooks I've ever heard. If you're looking for something a little bit more, say, magical, I unexpectedly fell in love with the Harry Potter series. And I don't usually listen to those kinds of books, and I loved it. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brené Brown bus yet, check out Brené Brown's books, starting with The Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, The Power of Vulnerability, And if you're an entrepreneur or leader in any capacity, check out her 2018 book, Dare to Lead. And Brene still is my most wanted guest, so if you know Brene, and you would be so kind to make that connection for me, I would be really, really grateful. You know who else I would like to have on the show? You. Click the podcast tab at ADHDrewired.com and then click the Be a Guest button at the top of that page and schedule a 15-minute pre-interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, keep growing, and keep connecting. Self-care is not selfish, and no matter what gets done or doesn't get done, at the end of the day, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.